I'm John Logston. That's Bonnie Paulson, and we got Joe Solari. We're going to be talking today about the current state of the publishing market and everything that's going on, especially with the election cycle coming up and so on, the State of the Union with AI and things of that nature. Joe, do you want to kick us off with inflation?
Do I really want to talk about inflation? Yeah, because I think it's something that's very important for authors to understand what's going on with the market. You know, we had a lot of people that had some amazing success through the pandemic boom and a lot of money coming into that and a lot of people with free time, and they saw sales like they'd never seen before. And now what I've observed in the hard data is showing that pendulum is kind of swinging the other way, and it's swinging the other way in uh, the biggest way in places where there's a fixed fee. So something like Kindle Unlimited, where you're paid on a page read, and you look at, and I took this information from, the data that comes out monthly and looking at what the actual page reads are. And you can see a chart where it moves up and down. There's always been a general downward trend. But when you take those numbers and you apply inflation and using $2015, and there's a specific reason why I picked that number, you see that there's over a 30% decline in the value of what you're getting. So you're not really getting 0.004 cents per page read. It's closer to 3 cents. It's 2.7.
Yeah.
And then also what's going on is and this is another part where people are kind of missing out, is with this big movement into overseas translations and people selling, I'm really going heavy into the German market. Well, now you're bringing into your business foreign exchange and the strength and weaknesses of currencies. So with what's happened in the economy since the pandemic is the US dollar has been getting stronger, right, against all these other currencies. So when it converts over, you're actually getting less. So what I would ask authors that are looking at this is like, look at your page reads. If you're in your page reads may be up. Your page reads may be increasing over time. But then when you see what happens when the actual money comes in, it's been coming down, right? So understand that that's not a function of your marketing. That's not a function of your audience per se. That's a function of just how money's less powerful than it was 5 years ago.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, I do think you should link to your post that you did about that, Joe, because I thought that was very clearly written. It was really concise about it, and it showed some great graph points. One of the things that I did love about it is it showed that even when your page reads are going up and you're like, yes, I have more page reads today than I did 2 years ago. How am I not making more? You explained it just like you did now, but it was it was just laid out. I'm a visual learner. So, so for me, when I hear audioly, I'm like, I need to see that in print. So let's add that link to the description so that they can go and check that post out. It was phenomenal.
Definitely.
Yeah, especially because some folks might go, Amazon's doing something behind the scenes. It's like, no, it's just the inflation.
No, that's the dollar.
Yeah, that's what happens when you put 5 times the amount of cash into the system than was there previously, right?
Sure. And of course, Amazon is probably doing something behind the scenes. But now, so we kind of just covered inflation and a little bit of the dollar strength and so on. But now we have an election cycle coming up, and this is not a political discussion. Nobody, don't be afraid. But we're just actually talking about how is that election cycle? How do you guys actually see it's going to impact, the author business?
Well, I'll actually segue off of the inflation piece. And one of the reasons why I picked 2015 as the number is 2016 is when Amazon really decided they were going to get aggressive about advertising. First thing they did is they just doubled their default rate. And you can see in their actual quarterly statements how they've moved the needle, right? And they were making about $5 billion a year in advertising, and now they're over 30 since then. So at the same time as you're getting less per dollar, they're charging you more for advertising. So whatever, forgetting about the election cycle for a second, advertising costs more than it did in the past. Now, the other thing we know, because we've been through election cycle, all of us here have been through at least one, maybe two election cycles as an author, it gets super expensive, right? We're looking at massive amounts of money that come in, and Facebook for sure is one of the most powerful advertising platforms
Right.
for it. And no matter what they say when they're sitting in front of the Congress, right? Congress says, you guys are bad, stop doing this. And they're like, you're right, we won't. They all love this game, right? Meta makes a ton of money off of this, and every guy that's been elected needs that platform to get reelected. So
Right.
we've got primaries, and then we've got a general election.
I think, though, to
Build
be
up.
on the positive side of that, we need to also look at, some people, a lot of people are emotionally tied to the primaries and to the elections and all that. And so if people aren't, when they're emotionally tied to it, they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I'm usually election year. I usually shut down. I'm going to read. That's all I'm going to do is read. And so for me, it's a huge spending year because I am trying to escape and I'm trying to read. But then you have other people who, are affected by who's winning or who's not. And they actually will shut down the other way. They don't want to read. They don't want to do anything but maybe binge watch Suits or whatever, whatever show is on. And that's something too to be aware of. So if we're having this fluctuation based on how the politics are going, people are emotionally tied to these things. And that's another reason why your page reads might drop or they might go up. Like, you really can't rely on your advertising as being the only thing that's gonna make the difference here.
Right, but think of this, that, just as you said, you're looking for those new reads and so on. The problem
Right.
is that putting your ads up on something like Facebook is going to be really hard to do because as you're doing that, the prices are going to go up. You're going to have
Right.
less exposure because the spend that are coming in from the political pundits it's going to be much more than,
This
you're
is where
likely to be
targeting is
spending.
really important. Yeah.
This is where I think, with what we teach with IMM is to basically say, look, make sure that you have this community that you have built, because as you release
Yeah.
your new books and so on, you're going to have that organic, build of your business continuing forward, and they can help market you better than you can do yourself anyway, but they can help market you and, kind of help you through this type of time.
Well,
Yeah. Good
I
point.
think that's a really good point, because especially based on what Bonnie said, is it part of what your brand is that sanctuary from all the garbage that's out in the world. Then that's something you can really be focusing your message on. It's like, there will be none of that here. Come in, it's going to be okay. But I also want to touch on, there's a lot of folks that are going to watch this that are having great success now on TikTok. TikTok's never been through an election cycle. So be prepared for some weirdness. I don't know what it's going to be, but everybody's going to want to tap into that demographic, right? That's the only reason why I believe TikTok is still around in the United States and hasn't been deplatformed from the United States, is because there isn't either political party that doesn't want to have that as a resource going into this next election cycle.
Agreed.
No arguing that. All right, let's jump forward a little bit, or jump current, as it might be.
Okay.
AI
Oh.
is, it's the talk of the town. You have some people who hate it, some people who love it, some people who are agnostic, they don't care one way or the other, and so on. I'm personally a fan, but how do you see this as far as, how do you guys see this as far as like being impacting to the current state of the publishing market?
Joey, you want to hit this or?
Yeah,
I
I go right ahead. I mean, I've got my
Okay.
opinions.
I do have my opinions. From a marketing standpoint, I think it would be foolish not to at least understand what it can do for you as a tool. Whether you believe in how it applies to your books or not, that's a personal thing. But to understand that, like, we use Grammarly, right, to correct our grammar and to take a look at our whatever. I can't even talk about it, like punctuation and stuff. So when we use tools like that to make our writing better, I really enjoy AI for making my advertising better, my copy stronger. And I actually tell it to do that, like, and it does. I need this to have a more romantic tone. I need this to have more of a catch all. I need this to be more action oriented. So I think AI as a tool, to ignore it will kind of be like when everybody back in 2008, 2009 was kind of like, oh, ebooks are never going to pick up. Don't do it, blah, blah. And it was like, yeah, but you're also the one who's signing up for it a year later. So I feel like not acknowledging it as a possible presence is kind of backtracking and leaving ourselves a really poor foothold. But that's my opinion. I don't know.
Mhm.
So,
Uh, Whether you want to use it or not, like you could still type on a typewriter,
mhm.
right? But at some point, they're going to take your thing and somebody's going to have to scan it and get it digital to get it into print, right? Even if you're turning it into another physical format of a print book, that has to become digital at some point, right? So I think
Mhm.
some of this stuff about like I'm going to resist the technological change, it's only hurting you, right? Because all these companies are integrating these tools and features into everything because they're competing, right? Microsoft needs to compete with Google and Google needs to compete with whoever, so all these guys are going to be trying to make their product the most feature rich, helpful tool for you to get done what you need to get done. Now, the idea that somehow mass creation of product is going to change things is that we've already played that game out. There's 14 million books in Kindle.
Mhm.
So it's
And the best will rise to the top. So,
right. And so the moral of the story is if you're just using these productivity tools to create mediocre stuff, then you will end up in the mediocre pile. But if
mhm.
you're exceptional at what you do and you work at becoming exceptional, these tools can help you do that and to get things to market faster and in a more efficient way, right? Because a lot of the stuff that people are doing, they're not that good at. And to let, to get the general gist and then let, a tool help you get the copyright better is going to save you time and save you money. So I think that the important thing for anybody watching this to come away with is, first up, what it's going to be like in 5 years is going to be fundamentally different. Like, so don't whine and cry
Mhm.
and worry about what's going on right now, because this is like bitching about dial-up modems.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry
Dang it, I
about
missed
it.
mine.
This will all end up in a cardboard box behind me. Um, uh,
Hey, what are you saying?
uh,
Risking Commodore.
but think about how you're going to use whatever these tools become to deliver what you need to deliver to your readers.
Plus, there's also a bit of it's great to have a buddy to talk to. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but in a developer community, it's actually used a lot. Things like ChatGPT or Bard or whatever. Because if there's a particular issue that you're trying to solve, a lot of us are working remotely. And so there's an issue you're
Mhm.
trying to solve, and this person's in that meeting, that person's in that meeting. You jump over to ChatGPT and say, "Here's what's going on. Give me some ideas." Even if it's just that, which again you could use towards your copy for writing, for an ad or whatever. It doesn't mean you take verbatim what's being told to you, but it gives
Mm.
you ideas, and then from there you kind of work with it as if you would maybe a co-author or a writing partner or whatever you want to call it, just somebody you're brainstorming with. And if you treat it like that, it's actually super powerful and super helpful. You do have to know what you're talking about, and this is one of the things that I think is interesting, because it kind of is analogous. If you are a writer who is brand new, have no idea what you're doing, and you're just trying to use this thing to throw out books, it's going to come out crappy. But if
Mhm.
you know what you're doing, you understand how your words work and all that kind of stuff, you know what your voice is and so on. When this thing starts to speak, you go, I can only really use this for ideas. And I bring this, I say it's
Mhm.
analogous to development, which I don't want to get too nerdy, but the point here is this, is that if I were to say, how do I do this particular thing? How would you approach this problem? I can look at it with the experience of somebody who's been programming for 50 years and kind of go, maybe not that long, but anyway, you kind of go, um, okay, I get where you're coming from, ChatGPT, but that's really stupid. I would not do that, right? Because I have the
Right.
expertise to know that doesn't make sense, what is suggested, but it gives me a spark of an idea.
Mm.
So I
Mhm.
agree the whole point of quit whining about it. It's not going to help. It's not going away. And no matter how much, oh, I think it's wrong and everything else. Okay, you can think that all you want. While everybody else is jumping on board, moving forward, you're going to be watching the train go away. So
Yeah.
get
Yes.
used to it.
Mm.
It's
But
going
you'll
away.
have your principles. You'll have your principles.
Well, and you can still have your principles by using it the right way, and so on.
Right.
But trying to think, I'm not going to use it,
Agree.
you're going to get left
Yeah,
behind.
agree.
Okay, let's jump off of that and jump into market fluctuations. We're gonna throw this one to Joe. Just go ahead and start. We all know you're the business guy. Just do it.
You This is something I talk about a lot. I mean, I don't think there's many industries that are more cyclical than publishing, right? Because you have your just general business cycles of booms and busts, and then you have genre things changing. People like they're super into this, and then they have too much of it, so they're sick of it, so they swing the other way. And then you have your personal ups and downs of how full your creative well is and where you are in your creative process and your series, and all of these things make it so that you have a lot of ups and downs. Yet is the industry talks about things like it's just going to be always up and to the right and wonderful, and it's just show me how to scale, Bonnie. Just show me how to scale this, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's that's not reality.
Right.
I
I
don't
think
know if
one
that
thing
helped.
though
That was
that
more of
is
a rant.
no, it was, but it is because I mean it's true because we had a bunch of people dropped on their reading. It was Mother's Day, and whenever that was. And so there was a huge like drop in reads, right? Well, moms are having to pretend like they care that people brought them flowers and chocolate and that they're doing dinner for them when that's not what moms want for Mother's Day. Moms want to read, but they can't because they have to sit there and eat dinner that they didn't like making, that they didn't like because somebody else made it, right? I mean, like, let's be honest, right? So there was a huge drop in reads that day. The next day, there was a huge spike in reads because moms were reading at night when they wanted to be reading during the day. But I had a lot of people who were like, I don't understand. It's Mother's Day and I did all these sales and I don't understand why my sales were down. I was like, yeah, it's Mother's Day. You don't celebrate Mother's Day? Like, what's going on? Like, you don't, and Christmas, same thing. Christmas Day, major drop in sales and not to be political, but when the war in the Ukraine started, oh my gosh, huge drop in sales,
Mm.
huge drop in reads. People's attention was diverted. And as we're talking about all of this, market fluctuation is not just affecting the author. It's what is the reader's experience? What are they going through that, graduation was a huge thing, end of May, early June. We have
Mm.
Father's Day weekend. Everybody's camping now. Why? Why are you out with the ticks? Go back inside and read a book. Like, I don't understand. What is wrong with people? But that's again, market fluctuation. So school's going to start up in September. There will be more reading. Like, this is just, it's literally year to year. It's just like you said, it's cyclical, but it's almost where we can plan on it. Do your releases on this time. Trad Publishing releases a ton starting in October, November. Like, we know these things, so we should be planning accordingly.
Right, because people want to buy stuff for the holidays, right? So it
Yeah,
is
exactly.
totally works out for that. And I mean, it I've seen it in various industries that I've worked in where it's pretty much the same kind of, waves that are just kind of going through that, but we just have to plan for it. And also, if you are thinking about some type of a release strategy for this new series that you have, and you just go, well, the book is done. It's June. I'm just going to put it out there. You might want to think, well, I'm going to be writing 2 or 3 more books ahead anyway. maybe I should really plan this out and start it in September or October or something that's, hey, the kids went back to school, I can read again, that kind of
Right.
thing. You might want to start thinking about that. Doesn't mean you have to do a rapid release strategy or anything. It's just saying that your release strategy might follow better if you're hitting when the wave is coming up versus when it's crashing.
Well, and
Um,
that's
Right.
a really important point because certain genres have expectations of when books come out and how they come. This isn't just
Mhm.
about like, oh, I got a new series. It's like, how are you demonstrating to your audience that you're going to deliver, right? And,
Mhm.
certain genres, I was just talking to somebody on a call the other day who's getting into epic fantasy. And I'm like, he's asking me about his first book marketing. And I'm like, I wouldn't market a penny on the first or second book,
Agreed.
right? It's the third book. And maybe
Mhm.
you think about hoarding this stuff and doing some things so that you can get the algorithm to work with you that looks sort of rapid releasey, but not. There's a lot of things that can be done to give yourself higher probability of success. But if you throw a book because it's done, like you said, well, it's January and I'm done and here it is, and then you disappear for 2 years writing the next book. Like,
You
don't
shot
be
yourself
that.
in the foot.
Yeah, I've had those calls. I don't know why my book's not selling. It's like, well, you know, there's
you're
2
writing
years
in a genre
between,
that requires 5 books for people to take you seriously or not.
and you took two
Yeah,
years between
you're right.
books. You're irrelevant, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, and unfortunately, some of the stuff has been caused by authors and their
Oh, huge.
negligence
Huge.
in releasing products.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there is something to be said about patience, and recognizing that yes, emotionally, you finish the book, you want it in people's hands. They're going to love it. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait. Or you're just, okay, I've worked so hard for this. It's got to get out. That kind of a concept. But put on
Yeah.
your business hat,
Hmm.
because your business hat's going to
Mhm.
sit there and say, you know what? If I do this and I don't release another book for 6 months, what's really going to happen? And I mean, if you have, any history in writing in this industry, you're going to know that if you don't release books, if you've been releasing books on some type of a cadence and then you suddenly say, I'm going to change that, completely, I've been there.
Right.
You're going to
Mhm.
see a drop off, of
Oh,
that.
huge.
And then now you're going to go, does that mean I have to release a book every week to be successful? And you're like, no, you have to be consistent to be
Mm,
successful. And your,
yep.
and your readers
Yeah.
have to understand what your promise is to them, and you have to keep it. That's the
Mhm.
primary thing. So jumping to, we have a couple more things to touch on this, and then we should probably wrap this up. But the first one is,
Okay.
what are readers expecting or hoping for? Fine.
I think, Joe, we talked about this. John, you and I, all three of us have actually talked about this in IMM. And every time we get together, which is always so fun. But I think the reader's expectation now, like 10 years ago when, KU was coming out and everything and everybody's rapid releasing, I think the reader expectation was different than it is now. I think then it was, I just want all the books right now. Binge me everything. Like, give me everything. Cheapest books, I'll take it, whatever. But now, as we're seeing, I mean, after the pandemic, there was a lot of that disconnect from people. People were disconnected from each other. Now I think what readers are looking for is that connection, not just to the books and to the experience that the books can deliver, but what the author can deliver too. I think with the internet and stuff, it's really tying people together. It's making the distances between us shorter. I mean, look at us. We're all way far apart from each other, and yet here we are having a discussion. And I think readers are looking for that connection as well. They're just looking for, this person made me feel X. I want to understand them so I can continue that relationship with them. And I think that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a connection. They're looking to be warmed and heated and, excited about who they're talking to. And so I think gone are the days of a negligent author. I think now we're hitting more of where are you present and where are you meeting your reader at?
Yeah,
Would you
it's
guys agree
interesting
with
you
that?
say this. Yeah, I actually do. And it's interesting because I've heard from multiple readers that, hey, you guys taught us to be this way, and
Mhm.
I'm like, what do you mean? It's just like, well, if you recall, the main reason that we started on your list is because you gave us a free book. And so, I was getting 400 signups a day back in 2000, whatever it was, 17 or something. I was getting ridiculous number of signups a day for people who wanted that free book. And so
Mhm.
they were trained. You get a free book and you start doing it. But now then everybody started, all the authors started. And then we started
Right.
seeing, TBR lists that were 500 books deep. They're never going to get to that, especially when they find this other author who has a 5-book series and that first book is $2.99. Well, now they got skin in the game. So are they going to read the
Mhm.
$2.99 book or your free book that's been sitting at the back, position 492? They're going to probably read the one that costs them money because, again, skin in the game, right? And so
Right.
we taught them in a certain ways, which means now we need to re-educate
Me
our
too.
readers, or at least re-educate them, the ones who are coming to us and saying, look,
Right.
everybody else might work that way. And if that's what you want, if you want to go out there and just find a bunch of free books to throw to the back of your Kindle that you're probably never going to read, I'm not the author for you. What I really want is somebody who actually wants to join me on this journey, which means, yeah, we're working together as a team here. And here's what I promise I'll deliver. And then I deliver it.
Right.
The thing I would add, I was on a Clubhouse call the other day, and it was interesting. There was a big conversation about BookBubs.
Mhm.
Somebody's like, "Oh, I got a BookBub," and it typically goes in a couple different prongs, right? One is, are you seeing them make the kind of money you used to make with the right? And then there's the, what should I do now that I know I have a right? And I just quietly listened to the whole thing and what different people were saying, and I think that that's a great example of how things have changed in the marketplace and expectations are different. The author expectation, it was, when I got a BookBub, it could change my life. It could bring me to the point where I could go to writing full time because I could get this visibility and amazing things would happen. Right. Well, that market's changed, right? The BookBub audience is, I don't know, sophisticated is the right word, but it's mature, right? And they're very
Mhm.
focused on discounts and freebies, right? And so you don't get the same kind of impact you used to have. You don't get the same kind of customer, right? So even if you were somebody that had a lot of success in that in the past, and then you're like, well, what's going on in my business? It's like, well, where you were going to find customers, what you were harvesting there has changed. It's not just somebody that's looking for book visibility, right? Because that's initially what it was. It's like, it's one of the few places where I could find about new books and get a deal. Now
Mhm.
it's like, the only people there want deals. So now you get a list of people that all they want is deals. And then you come out with a full price book and you can't sell it.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
that's the market changing and the expectations. And it's like, well, that means you have to change your expectations. Like, well, I have to go find full paying customers. Well, that's hard. Oh, well, it's like, okay, well, that's the stuff we talk about, right? And the other part of
Mhm.
that is you're competing against authors that are listening to us. And we're talking about different stuff. We're talking about what you were talking about earlier, Bonnie, about the feels and the
Mhm.
community and sanctuary. And that's a fundamental difference in the brand, right? And we've
Mhm.
seen success out of that where, like, you don't have to sell books anymore. People just buy them. And if you're coming in and you don't want to play that game, which is your choice, but
Right.
it's hard, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you're just another guy writing a military science fiction book about an old man on an old spaceship and a new alien race coming to attack humans, like, there's only
It won't hit.
thousands of books.
Right.
That's the one that'll sell, right? Like, that that may work for somebody else because they did it years ago and they've developed a community and there's writing different stuff now. But if you think you're just going to come in and do it with the same old stuff that worked for all of us in 2017, not.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good segue actually into the last thing that we're going to discuss here, and that is what will it take to survive? And I'd like to go ahead and kick off on this one, which is basically in support of what you just said. What's going to take to survive is a different strategy than what you used to survive last year and the year before and the year before. It's ever changing. It does not stay the
Right.
same, except for, I think, one thing: your ability to relate with your reader. That's the primary
Mhm.
thing to bring to the table. It's not about how much more money can I spend on Facebook ads or on Amazon ads. Yes, those are important. I'm not saying they're not, but
Right.
it's a situation of what I have is I have a relationship with the reader. I have brought the reader into my universe or universes, whatever, and so on. And I have the opportunity to connect with them, and we talked before about the ice cream shop, right? But the idea is bring them in, give them a taste. Yes, but don't give them the
Mhm.
whole freaking, you know, every single time. That was yesterday's strategy. I'm not saying that free
Mhm.
books can't work. It can. As a matter of fact, I'm attempting something different on my own, to see how that's going to approach. But I look at it more as a test than I do
Mhm.
as a rule. And in the past, it was a rule. It was you give away this full free book thing, and you go to BookBub, like Joe said, and you nail that. You go to Free Book Scene, you nail that, and you give away 20,000, 30,000 books. And yes, in the past, because these were people who had Kindles, they just got them, and they're like, oh my gosh, and I can read, 15 books. But then everybody started to do it. And then it became 50, then it became 150, then it became 5,000 books. You can't read that many books. So
Mm-mm.
that's when the whole strategy again started to shift. And it will
Right.
shift tomorrow. It will shift a year from now. It will continue to shift. And so to survive, in my opinion, is to be able to do the things that are evergreen. And that is a relationship with your customer. What is your brand? Finding the people who suit your brand and
Mhm.
delivering on the promises that your brand makes. If you do those things, yes, you're still going to have the shiny objects. You're still going to have the, hey, this wave just came up. And that's great. And sometimes we might look at those waves and hit them. And if we hit those waves, but we don't have this fundamental concept of that relationship that you are building with your readers, all you're going to do is hit that wave and crash again, and then hit the next wave and crash again. But if you don't, then if you have that relationship built, you hit the wave and you grow. You hit the wave and you grow.
Mhm.
So if you want to continue going in this direction, that relationship is huge. And I think that hopefully people are starting to see that, but we'll see. Joe,
Yeah, I love that.
Honey,
No,
either one
I
of you?
100% agree. The reality of it, even your money you spend on Facebook, the money you use for anything, it all comes from readers, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
come from Amazon. That's a middleman, right? It's somebody that is determined that your work is worth their hard-earned money. And
Mhm.
if you can connect with them and get them to feel that your time in your story world is priceless, then they're going to continue to come back no matter what's going with the ups and downs in the market and changes, because they've got these long-term connections. And we all can point to examples where people have these parasocial relationships with characters that
Mhm.
are deep, right? They're foundational to their identity. And that's why we're talking about all this stuff, is that's the game that we're looking to play, is about making these sanctuaries, getting people to understand what the belief system is and how their identity connects with your stories. And even if it's something like, I just, like my business partner, Lisa, she loves reading trashy romance, right? It's part of
Who
her
doesn't?
identity, right? Like, because that's where she gets to turn her brain off and stop thinking about people's numbers and finances. And you think, well, it's just trashy romance. No, but it's part of her identity, that's how she
Mhm.
goes and has her time. And when
Right.
you deliver that, like, that's worth more than $3.99.
Mhm. Oh,
Totally.
definitely.
Wrap this up, Bonnie. What do you think is going to be the key to the survival here?
I agree with you guys. I think really connecting with the readers, but I think again something that we touch on a lot in IMM is, really delivering consistently on your brand. If you're writing trashy romances, which hey, dude, I'm a sucker for a good smutty book, like hello. But if that's your brand and you're like, hey, I'm delivering up this alpha hero and these moments that are just amazing, and then suddenly you give me a cinnamon roll guy, I'm gonna throw the book across the room. It's not gonna be what I'm asking for. I want a consistent brand that is gonna like release really like regularly. I'm not asking for every week. I'm not asking for every month. I'm asking for, hey, did I pre-order your book and you delivered on it, or did you cancel the pre-order? And I got an email saying that the pre-order was canceled. And as a reader, I'm now pissed because I don't know what's going to happen with Joe. Like I want, that's what I want as a reader. And I'm a huge reader. In fact, that's why I write, is because I love to read and I want to read what I want. I want to write what I want to read as a reader. And so when I'm like, hey, I have pre-ordered, like I spend a ton of money on books, a ton. I'm a whale reader. And so when somebody drops the ball, I blacklist them. I have a list of readers that I read. I've got a little book of them. And I'm like, bastards, cancel their pre-order. I'm out. Like this is, and I cancel pre-orders. I'm the jerk that cancels pre-orders. Like I obviously do not hold myself to the same standards. Yes. but imagine if I did. Imagine if I didn't get bored and if I didn't have major, John thinks I have attention problems, but like imagine that didn't happen. And imagine if I had stuck with it when I was in one of the very first BookBub rollouts. I didn't even have a newsletter list when it first, and I made like $30,000 that month from one book. This is ridiculous. And I don't have the list from that because it wasn't consistent. I didn't stick with my brand. I was an idiot. And so that's what readers want. I want that. And I'm not doing it. And so I'm looking at myself going, you're an idiot, but I can see what I'm doing. I'm fixing what I've done. Is that what everybody's doing? And if you're the person who's going to fix what and is willing to put the work in to fix what you might have broken or you didn't know was wrong, I think is going to be what it takes to survive. And that's going to be where you're connecting with a reader like me and you're delivering on your promise over and over and over and over, whether it is trashy romance or a terrifically written mystery plot or sci-fi romance or whatever, like whatever your brand is. If you're sticking to it and delivering on it, I think you're the one who is going to be surviving and floating to the top, where these people using AI and not sticking to their brand, they're going to be falling. So yeah, I mean, fix it if you haven't and start out right. And if you're doing everything right, I think you're going to be just fine.
So 3 things I took from that was, first off, is that you were following an older strategy and you're trying to now recover from that. Same. I'm doing the same. The second thing is I have no idea what a Cinnabon man is or whatever the hell you said there. And the third, as far as smutty romance. Yeah. And the other thing was, Joe is in smutty romance. Those are the things that I got.
I'm reading this series. Oh my gosh, shut it. I'm reading this series right now. And the main guy's name is Joe. And I'm waiting for him not for this Joe. That's the age gap romance.
Is he old?
Very.
Like our Joe?
No, this guy's it's actually a bully. It's like I'm really into the NA Academy bully books right now. Yeah, it's whatever. It's fine.
We're moving into TMI territory at this point, I think.
Yeah. So anyways, that's what I'm into. So yeah, there was a series where the guy's name is Joe. Well, they'll know what to send me, so target me with your ads. So
exactly. I'll tell you if they work. Yeah, just don't miss your pre-order. But
yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. Anything else that we want to add, or are we all set and ready to move on?
I think that's good.
Time to move on. Let's go.
Rock and roll. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it.